Welcome back for a special synopsis on a retrospective I'm working on. This will be part one, basically just an overall view of some of the basic info on a specific game console generation. And there's going to be a total of 4 normal retrospective console reviews coming. So, this is a retrospective look back at my personal favorite generation, the sixth console generation. I will also, with each console I talk about in each video, I will probably talk about 5 or 6 specific games on each console, respectively, that hold special places for me. I will try to look for at least one game from different genres of gaming to talk about. So with that said, this is a retrospective on the sixth console generation, and the music in the background comes from Soul Calibur 2. So, from the sixth generation, we have... First, we're going to talk about go in order of release date of consoles. So, of course, we have the Sega Dreamcast, which is my all-time personal favorite game console. I always did like the design. Plus, I like the way it opens up slowly, like it's going to present something special. Just always like that. Overall, of course, basic for controller ports. And if you look closely at the symbol right here, it says Windows CE, Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft developed pretty much all the computer side software and stuff for this, for like the internet browser and everything. So yeah, you can thank Bill Gates for at least some of the internet parts. Because, to be fair, the Dreamcast was quite ahead of its time, respectively. And I will be doing videos in order of release dates. So, the first of the retrospective console reviews will be the Sega Dreamcast. But it is definitely a console that will always hold special place, and it's my number one favorite console of all time, of course. So it's by far my personal favorite from the sixth console generation. So that's next releasing in order was the best-selling game console of all time, the PlayStation 2. Yep, the good old Model 1, or rather the PS2 1000 model, specifically, which is of course the most common. And this console, it does bring back memories. Once upon a time, this was probably my favorite console of the sixth generation, but as time has progressed, the PS2 has now become, in my opinion, my least favorite console. Though, to be fair, it's pretty close with third. But with that said, the PS2 still holds a very special place for specific games when it comes down to it from the sixth generation. Responsible for some of my personal favorite, of course, RPGs of all time. Specifically, of course, like Final Fantasy X, the black sheep of the family, Final Fantasy XII, of course, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, and Chain of Memories, and many other great games, which I'll talk about in the PS2 retrospective. But still, can be interesting. It was also the first console that you could stand up sideways if you wanted to, and you could get a thing to lock it in place and screw it in so it wouldn't fall. Which actually did come in handy if you have more limited space that you couldn't lay it down, though I personally recommend laying it down because it tends to, I think, last longer doing it like that, but to each their own. Some prefer this. And the fact that you could actually also move the PlayStation symbol also to however you wanted to do it. Which is kind of cool, actually, that you could actually move the symbol like that. It's quite interesting. and some people may not actually know about the PS2, but still is arguably, of course, the best-selling console of all time with 155 million units sold. Quite impressive. Many great games, though. I will say this console is a great one for fighting game fans. I still think the Dreamcast is the best console of the 6th generation when it comes to overall fighting games, but the PS2 is probably literally almost neck and neck with it when it comes to overall games. Now, when you want 3D fighting games, I'd say this is the better console for 3D fighters. And the Dreamcast has some really solid great 3D fighters, but I think overall has better 2D fighters. And that's pretty much the way Sega's always been. Always had the better 2D fighting game console. Next up, both consoles were released technically about a week separate from each other. First, we would have next the very unique and interesting console, best well known for having mini discs, which indeed does make it interesting, the fact you only played a mini disc. And actually, there's a mini disc in here right now. Would you look? It's The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, which is, in my opinion, the best Zelda game of all time. But definitely a very unique console, design-wise. That's one thing I'll give. This generation did have a couple of interesting designs. Like the Dreamcast, this is a very compact console. Also has, of course, 4 controller ports, just like the Dreamcast. So that was good for like certain multiplayer type games if you wanted to play like that. For sports games and things like that, definitely good. There's some solid fighting games, even though it doesn't have too many great fighting games, unfortunately. But to be fair, the controller isn't exactly one of the best controllers when it comes to actual fighting games. Personally, I'd say design-wise, the DualShock 2 is probably my personal favorite controller from this specific generation. I would say also up there is the Model 2 controller with the original Xbox. But the Dreamcast and the GameCube, I will say if you're willing to collect for any of these 4 consoles, I would recommend the original Xbox the most because it's by far the cheapest to collect for. Keep that in mind. You can get a huge amount of games on the original Xbox that will cost under $20 a piece. I'm not even joking. You can probably get easily 50 or 60 games that run $20 or less per title. There are a few that are going up now, a few specific ones like Obscure and a few others which go for like $70+ on the Xbox, but given the same game goes for over $200 on the PS2, it's by far the cheaper option. Now, if you're a hardcore Nintendo fan, I'd say the GameCube is definitely a good console to collect for. There's some really great RPGs specifically for this console, as well as many great survival horror games. I mean, you have like 6 or something like Resident Evil games on it. I mean, Resident Evil 0, Remake, 2, 3, Veronica X, you have Resident Evil 4. So yeah, you have quite a few. But it is, like the Dreamcast, the most expensive consoles of this generation to collect for. Because that seems to be the way with a lot of Nintendo consoles become some of the most expensive to collect for. But it's probably because also, like the Dreamcast, it did not sell great. Though, to be fair, this sold better than the Dreamcast. This sold something like around 21 or so million units. Not great, but the Dreamcast only sold 9 million units, which absolutely sucks. But definitely, it's become a coveted console to collect for collectors, and that's why it's very pricey to collect for overall. The PS2, I would say, is the second best option. Probably the best option when it comes to variety of games of many genres. Though just know, if you collect for the PS2, survival horror games are going to be some of the most expensive games on the PlayStation 2. Which I'm going to be in the future talking about 10 of the most overpriced games on the PlayStation 2, so you can check that out and you'll see what I'm talking about. And anyways, it still doesn't change the fact that it's a great console to collect for. And last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the Brick console. That being the original Xbox. Yeah, this thing is a juggernaut. Now, weirdly enough, it is quite interesting when you think about it. Design-wise, like, this sucker weighs a lot. This probably weighs as much as almost all three of the other consoles combined. I'm not even joking. This sucker weighs probably around, I believe it weighs something like around 12 to 13 pounds. So yeah, it's actually quite heavy for a console. Probably one of the biggest game consoles of all time, arguably. Much like, of course, the Dreamcast and, of course, the GameCube. It has 4 controller ports on the front. Plus, this would be the first game console, of course, with actual built-in hard drive, which is what makes this specific console interesting. This is also probably the best console with multi-platform games. It arguably, like the 360, has considered to be probably the best multi-platform versions or ports out there. So if you like a lot of third-person regular third-party games, then the original Xbox is a way to go to play those multi-platform games from the 6th generation. It's probably the best port version console, but the fact that it can actually play a few games in 720p, believe it or not, a very select few of my games can actually play. Soul Calibur 2 is one of the games you can actually play in 720p in HD on this, which is hard to believe this could actually play HD. Also, like of course the PS2, you could play DVDs on this, though you had to have the special remote to plug in order to actually be able to play movies. But I will say you're probably better off playing movies on the original Xbox than the PS2, because it was designed better as a multimedia system, I guess you could say, because the disc reader on the Xbox One is likely screw up from watching a lot of movies as the PS2 rather will. That will screw it up a lot more, so I recommend not really playing movies on your PS2 if you want to last a long time. But that's just me. But overall, this is arguably the cheapest to collect for of the generation. And, like I said, I'll talk in the future about each console respectively, but that is a little look of things to come with this special retrospective on the 6th console generation. So with that said, leave a comment below and tell me which is your personal favorite of the 6th console generation. Is it the Dreamcast, PS2, GameCube, or original Xbox? But with that said, I look forward and stay tuned in the near future for part 1, of course, which will be on the Sega Dreamcast, then the PS2, GameCube, and the original Xbox, ending the retrospective. And I'll talk a little bit about each genre, like I said, and I'll show specifically, probably talk a little bit about maybe 6 different games on each console that I think are great games, great respective views of those specific genres or subgenres of gaming. With that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Stay safe out there. Because boy, this world just keeps getting more and more crazy by the day. But with that said, hopefully you enjoyed the Soul Calibur 2 music in the background. See you soon enough for the Dreamcast retrospective. See you then.